While Putin on his trip is showing that they are rebuilding, like making new apartment blocks, that's like only like a small part of what's actually happening there. Journalists who have visited say that most of the city is destroyed and people are barely trying to survive, walking around looking for water and food, etc.
The UK is today hosting a meeting of more than 40 nations in support of the International Criminal Court to discuss potential war crimes in Ukraine. Now, you'll be familiar with this. A day after he was issued with an international arrest warrant for war crimes, the Russian President Vladimir Putin then went on a tour of occupied Mariupol, one of the places where he's been accused of committing these crimes. Russia's accused of bombing a maternity centre and a theatre where civilians were sheltering in the city. Ukraine have said, look, the criminal always returns to the crime scene. We can go live to Kyiv now to speak to journalist Stephan Weichert, who's there for us. Stefan, this clearly has been a sort of propaganda trip of sorts. What is Putin trying to achieve?
Well, I mean, he's obviously trying to rally up support to this war effort to show that he's in control and to show that the situation in the territories that Russia have conquered, such as Mariupol, that the situation there is improving. Because on this trip, he also did visit some new apartment buildings that the Russian government has built in Mariupol in the outskirts to show that life goes on and Russia is taking care of these areas, basically.
He had some pretty extraordinary conversations with people. What kind of reception did he receive?
Well, I mean, there is people who are saying like that they're happy, stuff like that. But there's also a recording where he's standing outside these apartment buildings, where he's talking to a man, and everything seems to kind of be the narrative that Russia wants. But then there seemed to be a woman in the back yelling something like that is all a lie or something like that, which has been kind of discussed a lot in Ukraine. But in general, he's trying to portray himself as somebody who's helping these people and who's trying to um, basically to improve their lives as some kind of liberator.
And it goes without saying that message, of course, hasn't resonated in Ukraine.
That is clearly true. I mean, here in Ukraine, there's been a lot of speculation. First of all, it's been condemned that he even went there. But second, there's also been speculation about whether exactly it's Putin who has been there himself or one of his lookalikes, somebody who has been there instead. But in general, the reaction here in Ukraine has been kind of hard towards Putin for going there. And as some Ukrainians have told me, they're kind of like saying that now at least Putin went there himself. So when we are going to take it back later, because we are waiting here in Ukraine for what the Ukrainians call a new counteroffensive to take back more territory here in the spring, that then Putin will have been personally invested in Mariupol and it will be a bigger defeat for him. It's kind of like the Ukrainian narrative at the moment.
Can you explain to us the status of Mariupol right now? Because that is one of the places where, at least early on into the invasion, there was huge attention because of the grotesque and absolutely abhorrent nature of the crimes that were taken out there.
Yeah, well, the status right now is that the city is under Russian control. It's kind of far from the actual front line right now, placed in the south. It's a city which is really, really destroyed. I mean, according to the UN, it's around 90% of the city's buildings which are destroyed or partly destroyed. The few journalists from Western media who get access to the city, I'm not one of them, but the ones who gets access say that people are basically trying to survive. So while, Putin on his trip is showing that they are rebuilding, like making new apartment blocks, that's like only like a small part of what's actually happening there. Journalists who have visited say that most of the city is destroyed and people are barely trying to survive, walking around looking for water and food, etc. So the city is in a really difficult situation.
If you enjoyed that, there is plenty more. Join me, Rosie Wright, for Early Breakfast on Times Radio, Monday to Friday, 5 till 6 a.m.